Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. I could not be more excited. I have that tingly feeling that I imagine
from your pre-workout.
That imagine you get with your pre-workout that I'll let you describe at some point. And this, of course, is the one and only Karalynne Call, Just Ingredients founder, CEO, and we could not be more excited to have you here today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely. We love having you being here. You have such a great story, and I know you've told this story a million times. I don't think it ever gets old. This is probably a little bit of a new audience. So at some point, I'm going to ask you to tell that story again. But just to start, give me the 30-second overview of where Just Ingredients is today.
So Just Ingredients is a company that makes products that nourish the body. So our whole goal is we want to make products that you eat and products that you put on your skin, like beauty products, that will nourish the body and not have any controversial toxic ingredients in it. We don't want to mess with the endocrine system. We don't want to mess with toxins, things that could promote cancer, anything like that. We just want to give people, well, anyone outside of America, give everybody, I should say, products that they can trust that will just nourish their body and do that and simply that.
It's so interesting because in our country, we used to, like our grandparents and even my parents, nutrition was a lot different for them.
They just ate food.
They just ate food. And we've gotten away from that in a lot of ways. And for someone like me, and for lots of people, not just me, but life is busy and you're always looking for something quick to grab and to go. And the way we manufacture food today, they kind of make it easy to do that and inexpensive. So hopefully we can dig into some of that stuff and how you're trying to change that.
I'm trying to change that. So I would love to talk about that.
I'm a fan. I did the same thing. I can remember growing up. You talk about when you were growing up, like Frosted Flakes in the morning, bologna sandwich, on white bread.
Yep.
Probably enriched in the afternoon. And maybe, I love TV dinners. I mean, don't get me wrong. I watched Fantasy Island and had TV dinners. I mean, that was our thing. And so I grew up the same way. I can remember on the way to school every day, junior high and high school, my mom was working, my dad was out of the house early working, and we were all just busy. So we would drive by the donut shop.
Yep. I
would go in and get my chocolate-covered, cream-filled donut.
Almost every morning.
Yeah, and that was my breakfast.
Same, I know. But no knock on our parents. I feel like my mom, at least, she was just like, well, it's sold on the store shelves, so it's got to be good for us then, because why would they put anything on the store shelves that isn't? And so she just fed us what was on the store shelves, because cereal, they do a great job marketing. It's enriched with vitamins. It's a great start to the breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, for your day, things like that. And
Absolutely.
So she just did what she thought was right. And so now we know differently, so we've got to do differently.
Well, it's true, but it's hard. It's hard to reverse that trend. It can be difficult.
It can be difficult. Plus, everybody says, well, I ate that stuff and grew up just fine. Mm-hmm. But the problem is we're not growing up just fine. We've got, ADHD and depression and anxiety and autoimmune issues and migraines and joint pain and more than ever. And I would have to teach a lot. But like our Frosted Flakes today are not the Frosted Flakes I ate in the 80s and 90s. Now they use the GMO ingredients that are sprayed with glyphosate, which has a whole slew of issues. So it's not really the same food that we ate in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you grew up and where you grew up and all of that leading to where you are today. Are you from Utah? Are you a Utah native?
No, I actually grew up in Southern California, in Glendale, California, and I have 7 siblings. And so we had a big family, and our home was a busy house where friends were allowed in all the time. And so we had friends in and out and people staying with us all the time. And it was a very welcoming, fun home to grow up in.
Your childhood, was it pretty active? Were you outdoors? Did you have activities? Were you doing all the stuff?
Well, we didn't really have the cell phones, to just be
so true.
stuck on. I mean, we didn't have the cell phones. And so, you wanted to play with your friends and ride bikes in the neighborhood and jump on the trampoline outside and be outside playing after school was over. It's different than it is now.
Yeah.
Now they want to come home and just play their games on the TV and be on their phones and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
it's different today.
Yeah.
And social media. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
Even though I'm on it. And
I know,
our business thrives off of it.
It's been so good for your business and for you. But there's the other side of it that can be very difficult for kids and people who are trying to figure out where they're headed and what they're going to be in life. And so
lots of pros and cons, just like anything out there.
Yeah, absolutely. What did your parents do? Did both your parents work, or how was that situation?
So my dad was actually a ophthalmologist, and so he was just always busy doing work stuff, but also a great dad that was very involved in, the kids' lives and things like that, but involved in a lot of church responsibilities as well. And then my mom was busy with the 8 kids, but always volunteering in kids' classrooms and being PTA president and, doing all those community type things.
I actually grew up in Southern California as well.
Oh, did you?
I grew up in Culver City, which is a little ways away from. So we have that.
We have that in common.
We do. We probably have lots of other things in common.
Probably.
We'll discover as we go along. So was there would you consider your childhood normal? Were there any traumatic events that you had to overcome, or did you just kind of go on your way and things just unfolded?
There were some traumatic events in high school, but probably stuff I don't want to air.
Wait a second. You told me you were an open book.
I was an open book, but I didn't know we were going to discuss that part.
Past this high school experience.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody really wants to talk about high school.
Yeah, well, my parents ended up in a nasty divorce. Let's just say that. Yeah. And that was hard. So
super hard.
A lot of things involved that took place for that divorce to happen.
Gotcha. You mentioned earlier, but it didn't sound like nutrition was really a big topic around your house growing up.
Well, crazy enough, my dad was a type 1 diabetic and had multiple heart surgeries growing up. But back then it was, he has heart issues, so don't have any salt. Get rid of the salt. So we had no salt shakers at home. We never put salt in anything because that's what we thought was causing his heart issues. And the diabetes, we knew about sugar and stuff, but it was always like, he'll take some more insulin if he needs to. If we have dessert, that's what you do, is just take some more insulin. So there was that background, but that was about it. There wasn't anything else. Like you said, I would have donuts in the morning for breakfast or Frosted Flakes. In high school, we'd go to Burger King every day. That was the hangout spot, at lunchtime. It's release time. Let's just all go to Burger King and come home and maybe, I don't know, have something that sometimes my mom made, sometimes she didn't. But I look back and I'm like, I don't know if I had maybe one vegetable an entire week. I didn't have the foods that nourish your body.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky because I consider my mom a great cook. So we almost always had, at least for dinner, a home-cooked meal. Breakfast and lunch, more optional, but dinner time was a little bit different. And you didn't have any at that point growing up. I think people know a little bit of the background of your story, but you didn't have any, or you didn't recognize any kind of depressive events in your childhood, or would you say with family, siblings, parents, anything like that?
Nope. We just, grew up just going to school and coming home from school and playing outside and playing with friends and, practicing the piano every once in a while, even though we're supposed to do it daily, and like going to dance class or whatever, and just enjoyed the childhood for the most part and just went on with life. And it wasn't until after college that I started realizing a few things. And now looking back, I'm like, maybe some of those like outbursts that some of the kids had was maybe due to what we were eating, or maybe because this person always had headaches. Maybe that was due to what we were eating. But at the time, it was just, an easy childhood that seemed like a normal childhood.
Sure. Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yes, a doctor. But I went and became a math teacher. Crazy enough. I know.
That doesn't seem
It's
aligned.
one of my biggest regrets in life. But
Really?
Yeah, it is. Because my mom, crazy enough, this is old school, right? I mean, I grew up 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
She would tell me, you can't be a doctor and be a mom at the same time. So you need to choose one or the other. And so I legit listened to her because she was my mom and I thought she knew everything. And so I majored in math at BYU and became a math teacher.
So that's how you got to Utah. You went to BYU.
Yeah.
And became a math teacher.
Yep. At Murray High School in Utah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So I know I'm going to ask you some random questions later, but you just brought something up. You grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I just had this thought about a random question. Which is the better musical era? The 70s or the
80s.
Oh, you're wrong.
I'm an 80s girl.
You're so
I know.
wrong.
My husband and I fight over this all the time because he's a 70s.
Flashdance 80s?
Yes, I love all the 80s stuff. I know.
Man.
Give me the neon colors and the Cyndi Lauper and the Madonna and I know. My husband would die right now. He's a 70s hardcore.
Yes. And he's right. I have a theory about music. And one of my theories about music is that some people have their 15 minutes and then that should be it. It should be cut off completely. Like no more ever. I don't want to go into... And
some of those 80s people are thinking that for.
Well, you mentioned one of them.
Cyndi Lauper. I know, but back in the day, she was fun.
But it's like you said, looking back, now can you say...
Yes.
No, 70s... is my thing. And now, have you listened to Yacht Rock Radio, which is a bunch of 70s stuff?
No, but I'm sure my husband has.
It feels like I've gone home.
Oh, that's funny.
It's amazing.
I'll have to see if he listens to that.
Yeah, tune in.
We need something like that for the 80s.
There's not anything like that for the 80s.
Well, you know what? Actually, my car has choose the 80s favorites all the time. My kids actually hate it. Do you know they hate it so bad that listen to this.
Hope for your kids.
When we're in the car, we all have to take turns playing our song because they can't stand my music. Man. I don't like their music, so we all get a turn.
I feel like I try to give my kids a musical education when they're in the car.
And the 70s.
On all the stuff. So I have a wide range of music that I enjoy. And 70s is certainly part of that. But as we're going through this, and I think I'm doing them such a favor, I turn around and they have like headphones in.
Oh, that's
funny. And then
funny.
they're listening to
their good stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting that we're talking about music. I totally got off track. We'll get back.
That's okay.
We'll get back to Just Ingredients. A former coach for the Utah Jazz named Gordon Chiesa. It's actually Chiesa, but everybody says Chiesa.
Okay.
Says that the way that he connects, because he's older, the way that he connects with younger people is through the music that they listen to.
Interesting.
And so he'll go out and he'll study and determine all the stuff that they listen to, and then he'll become familiar with it. And that's how he connects with people. I just mentioned that because one of the things that you said about your popularity on Instagram is your ability to connect with people. And your story, people have either experienced that or have known people who have gone through something like that. And so that's your connection, which has led to over 1 million followers, correct?
It has, yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's the key, I think, to social media is if you can connect to your audience. And everybody's going to connect in different ways, right? There's funny people on Instagram, and there's educational people, there's emotional people. You just sort of find those that you connect with, and that's who you follow.
Well, let's start getting into the Instagram and how that all got started. So you went through BYU, you became a math teacher at Murray High School.
Yep.
And at that point, did you get married? Were you married or on your way to getting married?
Yeah, so the week after I graduated, I got married.
From BYU.
From BYU,
Yes.
because I didn't want to be married in college. That was just one of my things. So I was like, I will get married after I'm done with college. So the week after I graduated, we got married. Worked at Murray High for 5 years, and during that time had 2 kids, and then took off to California for my husband's job and had a 3rd kid. And then that's when all the depression and everything started.
That's like the event.
Yeah.
So I know that you're not calling it postpartum because your youngest was a year old.
Yeah, was over a year old.
But you started to experience significant depressive events.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. So today, though, I might say it was part postpartum. Now people can say you can have postpartum for years.
Yeah.
It can be 3.
I would
some
agree with
say
that.
5, things like that. But yeah, once I had a 1-year-old, I found myself with really bad depression, and depression looks different for everybody. And every day can be different. So people think, oh, depression just means that you're in bed and can't get out of bed. And there are some days like that, but some days it's just pure frustration. Some days it comes out as anger. Sometimes it's you aren't motivated to do anything and can't do anything. Sometimes it's crippling, like indecisiveness, not being able to make decisions. And so I had experienced everything from the frustration and anger and not wanting to get out of bed and not wanting to do anything and couldn't make decisions for quite a long time. And I actually was going to doctor after doctor trying to get help. But, well, I should back up. Do you want me to just tell the whole story?
You're absolutely.
Okay,
That's great.
I'm just going to tell you
Let's
the whole
do it.
story. So I found this depression, couldn't deal with it. I went to doctor after doctors. They kept saying, like, there's nothing we can do for you. We don't know how to heal from depression. And I always tell people, if you have a doctor like that now, they're a dinosaur, run, because we do know how to help people with depression. And we need to get that word out that we can help people. But I was getting so frustrated that I thought I was doomed with this for life. And so people kept saying to me, like, you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was like, there literally is no light at the end of the tunnel. I am so miserable. I am frustrated, mad, angry, sad, all those feelings every day, day after day after day after day. And so finally one day I just had it. I was like, I can't live my life this way. Like, my kids will be better off without me. Everybody will be better off without me. And so I actually attempted suicide. And thankfully, by the grace of God, the attempt failed. And at that point, then I realized, okay, I have hit rock bottom. I've got to find some help. And so back to the doctors again. This time, of course, I did antidepressants because I'm like, I need something that's going to help me. So for 2 years, I did the antidepressants while I went to doctor after doctor asking how to heal. And every single one, we don't know how to heal from depression. But in that whole 2 years, no one took my blood work. No one did any type of testing. They just kept saying the antidepressants the only thing that we know. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against antidepressants, but I wanted the body to heal because I kept thinking, like, you break a bone, put a cast on it, put the proper tools on it, it will heal. You cut your finger, the body heals. And I'm like, I haven't always been like this, so something had to have happened. Mm-hmm. So personally, I didn't love being on the antidepressants. A great description of it is I felt seatbelted in my emotions, meaning I didn't feel that terrible depression, but I also couldn't feel happiness. And so it just sort of kept me numbed in my emotions. And that was life-saving for me at the time. But I would go to doctors trying to get that adjusted too. Like, how can I feel happy or feel some laughter or joy in my life? And so they would change the dose, or they would add on a second one, or, try different things. And anyways, 2 years of being on this, I finally found a doctor who was like, yes, I can help you, but there's no overnight pill. There's like no magic pill. Are you willing and ready to do the work? And I was like, I am so desperate. Like, I have been looking for years. I will do whatever you ask of me. And so she's like, your body, depression is just your body screaming for help. Your body can't verbalize to you what's wrong, so it's going to show you with symptoms. And so she's like, we just need to figure out what's wrong in your body. So we did blood work, saliva testing, urine testing, did all this different testing, and found out that my body had a whole slew of issues, everything from little things to bigger things, meaning like low in magnesium, low in vitamin D, couldn't absorb my B vitamins, but then a little bit bigger things like My progesterone, estrogen was off. My cortisol was off. My liver was having issues with different things. Found out I had a gluten intolerance. Like the list was just huge of all these different things. And so, of course, my body was feeling like crap and feeling miserable because I wasn't taking care of it like how I needed to. And so I went on an 18-month journey with her of her teaching me the basics of how to fuel my body properly. And after a year of working with her and a lot of testing, then I was able to slowly wean off the medication. And I've never gone back on medication for depression. I've never had to deal with the depression again because she taught me how to fuel my body properly so that my body could do its best in return for me. And so that's my health story. And then about 7 years ago, so ever since that time, so back up, ever since that time, I have just been an avid reader on nutrition. I would go to conferences, classes, took classes, went and got my nutrition certificate. I loved soaking in all that information just to learn for myself and how I can help my kids. And so about 7 years ago, I felt like everybody around me was dealing with either depression, anxiety, autoimmune issues, ADHD, migraines, chronic fatigue, you name it. Someone, my neighbors, my extended family members, community members. And I was like, I just want to help them so bad. If I could just go in their house and redo their groceries and cook for them for a month, I know they would feel so much better. But of course you can't do that. So I was like, you know what? I'll just start a little Instagram account as a little hobby and try to give little tips to people on how to live a healthier lifestyle.
It's so great.
And at this point, I had 6 kids still at home. And so it was a busy time, but I was like, it'll just be a fun little hobby. And my goal was to get 2,000 followers. And if I got 2,000 followers, then I'd done my job. Well, it just kept growing, and word of mouth, people just were sharing my post, and it kept growing. And so then once it got to 100,000 followers, I was like, hey, I've actually got an audience. I've educated up to this point, but now why don't I provide products that are the things that I'm talking about? Products made with real ingredients that fuel the body. Yeah. And so we started making products, and Just Ingredients took off.
I have a lot of questions on that whole story.
Yeah, that was a long story. Sorry.
It's a great story. Let me see if I can fill in some of the pieces that I have questions about. So you have 6 kids, but you started getting depression or feeling depression or recognizing it after your 3rd kid. Are you going through this depression and you're still having children? So, yes, my 4th is my little miracle baby for me because I did get pregnant with her during all of this depression, and she was a baby during my healing of the depression. And so those days that I didn't want to get out of bed, I had to get out of bed to take care of her. And so I always look back as she was meant to come, because honestly, I think I would have just stayed in bed and not have had the determination to heal, because healing is hard work. You don't feel great day 2 of this. You got to get up and exercise and go get some vitamin D and eat healthy and, mentally be strong. And so those days that I wanted to stay in bed or be sad, I had to get up for her. So sometimes I think she was meant to be. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's interesting because it sounds like it was clearly it was overwhelming in your life. But you still had this desire to have children. And I think that is overwhelming.
There's a good 5-year gap between
so there's
next
a little
2,
space.
because I knew mentally I couldn't do it. I needed to work on my own health, and then I was ready to have another one. And those 2 have a whole different upbringing than my older 4, because my older 4, they know Fruity Pebbles, they know Twinkies, they know all that stuff.
All the good stuff. And now your oldest 2 are
no, listen to this. In fact, 2 weeks ago, they were talking about Twinkies and Zingers at the dinner table. And my youngest 2, who are 13 and 9, both were like, what are those? And my older kids were like, you've never heard of Twinkies and Zingers? And they're like, no. And they're like, oh, we got to bring them over just for you to try. I was like, no. They haven't tried them. It's great.
Really?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's so funny. But can't they try them? Do you
they
remember
try them because, okay, let me tell you. Last Saturday after soccer, the parent passed out ding dongs, and my daughter's
and you were like, what a ding dong.
Well, and my daughter's like, oh, what's this? And I'm like, it's called a ding dong. And she's like, are they good? I'm like, I think they taste terrible. And she's like, but I did let her try it. And she tried it. And she's like, yeah, it's not that good. Because I think if you're raised on homemade food and like real food, then you try something fake like a ding dong. She was like, yeah, it's not that good.
That's probably true. But for me, because I had ding dongs and singers and all those things. And do you remember the pink one that had like the coconut? I don't even know if it was real coconut on it.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't.
Those were my favorite. It's so
funny.
Nostalgic.
Yeah.
Even that terrible flavor, if I have that today, which I rarely do, there's so much nostalgia associated with like a happy childhood. So
yeah.
So I kind of feel bad
know what it did to me. So I'm like,
well, I want to ask you about that too. Okay, I'm lining up all these questions.
Okay, go for it.
You got to a point where you just thought, no, there was no hope.
Yep.
And you took some action. You were going to try to alleviate that.
Yep.
How did your family and how did Jeff respond to all of that?
Well, Jeff is a hero and he is a saint. Like sometimes I get emotional talking about his role in all of it because you have to have a really supportive spouse to go through this. And he honestly, though, didn't realize the severity of it until I had attempted suicide. And then at that point, he was like, oh, okay, we've got to find you help. We will pay whatever. I mean, we were not rich by any means at that point. We actually were struggling quite a bit financially, having 3 little kids. You're not making much, he'd only been in the work field for a few years, and so he was like, we'll pay whatever. We'll even put it on credit cards if that's what we need to do. Like, we're going to find you help. And after I'd attempted, though, there were a lot of hard days during that 2 years of trying to find a doctor. And there would be days that I'd be like, you have to come home now because if you don't, like, I won't be here.
Come home from work.
Yeah.
Like middle of the day.
You've got to come home. Yeah. So he was trying to juggle work and 3 kids and a wife that wasn't well to take care of him. And I had no other family support. It was him. And that was it. Because back 17 years ago, if you try to tell people like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with this mental issue, they were like, come on, get over it, buck up, get over it.
Stiff upper lip.
And if you try to tell like church people in my culture, they were like, you need to pray more, you need to read your scriptures more, you need a better spiritual connection. But yeah, I was doing all that. That's like telling someone who broke their arm to go pray about it rather than get a cast on it. You know what I mean? So I didn't have a ton of support. And so when people say like, oh, if you're dealing with depression, you need a big community to rally around you. I'm like, yeah, that's great if you have that. But if you don't, at least find one person. And so Jeff was my rock through that all.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And he's a saint for sticking around. And because he dealt with an angry Karalynne, a frustrated Karalynne, a sad Karalynne, not wanting to do anything Karalynne, a crying Karalynne. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he dealt with it all.
What was his family background, kind of growing up experience?
His mom worked a lot and so did his dad. And so he, and he's the youngest in his family. And so he really raised himself is what I say. Like they were busy at work. He came home to no one at home usually every day and played with friends and, after school, but really took care of himself a lot.
I'm going to have to do a podcast. We'll call it The Other Side. And I want to get Jeff in
there
here
you go.
And talk to him about his experience because he is also listed as a co-founder.
He is, yes.
Of Just Ingredients. But I would love to hear, and I think people would be interested in hearing his story as well, going through all of that and landing where you are today.
Yeah, they like hearing his side.
Yeah, it's got to be interesting. Okay, so you have this prompting that you want to educate and help people based on all of your experience. Like you've gone through this torturous time, you've found help, you've found a pathway out, and now you want to figure out how to help other people. One quick question before that. Do you think all of the stuff nutritionally leading up to this point accumulated and okay.
I do, because I also think back like late 90s, early 2000s. It was all like the low fat craze. And so it was like the cool thing if you only got like 10 grams of fat per day. And that's what I was always striving for, because you thought, oh, that's how you stay thin and stuff. And so girls, though, need actually healthy fats for their hormones, especially. That is what builds the hormones. And so my hormones were a mess, and that was part of it. And also, just not having any of the nutrients. I mean, I was low in vitamin D and the B vitamins and magnesium and so many things. Well, a lot of that comes from food. I wasn't eating fruits and veggies and all those things that have the nutrients. And my gut was a mess. And fiber feeds the good bacteria in the gut. I wasn't having any fiber, maybe some fiber from the donuts, or the Burger King buns.
Do they make whole wheat donuts?
Right? I mean, there were so many things contributing to my body not feeling well. But those nutritional deficiencies, for sure, finally just, your body's like, enough is enough. I can't function on nothing.
Yeah. And so which amazes me, because I watch teenagers do that all the time.
All the time. But so many of them, like now having a teenage daughter myself, these girls have like terrible PMS. They can't even go to school during certain times of the month. They're moody, like dealing with depression, anxiety. And I'm like, it's the food we're eating, the things we're putting on our body, all the beauty products that are full of endocrine disruptors, things like that. It's all of that.
Gotcha. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have gotten to this point where you have found a solution, and you want to help teach others. You start the Instagram account, and you just start doing education.
Yeah, simple stuff. Like it was literally like, hey, you guys, this ketchup has high fructose corn syrup. This one doesn't. Just buy the one without high fructose corn syrup. And so it was just simple little swaps. And I think that's what appealed to people, because people think like, oh, to live healthy, I've got to live like this kale and sardine diet, But I think they were like, oh, this lady has 6 kids who still like waffles and pizza and hamburgers and things that we all like, but she's somehow doing it in a healthier way. How in the world? And so I think that was part of the appeal, that it was just simple and still the foods that we all eat, except the Twinkies and the Zingers.
Okay, so there are things, obviously you can go into a grocery store and there's lots of things that you can purchase to consume. It's not like you walk in and everything's off limits. I think that's where I get lost a little bit, is that you want to be real food, whole food. That should be your basis or foundation. By the way, you can correct me.
No, that's good.
Wrong
that's right.
And then like there's a lot of the processed, manufactured stuff that you want to stay away from. Although like a guy like me, I used to call it my terrible sweet tooth, but now I call it my amazing sweet tooth.
Oh, that's funny.
Because I have an amazing sweet tooth.
Oh, that's funny.
And I don't know how to get over it. And I only try to limit what I intake on the sweet tooth side, but...
Well, and it's okay to enjoy a sweet, right? But the problem is these kids, especially today, like the average child gets over 80 grams of sugar a day of added sugar, when they're only supposed to get 24 grams of added sugar. And it's just because it's in their Capri Suns that they're drinking, and then all of the cookies that they're having at lunch. And it's just so much sugar all day long, and so much not real food all day long. And so mine's like, hey, if we want pancakes in the morning for breakfast, let's make pancakes with real ingredients, like how your grandma would have made them back in the day with the eggs and the flour and the real stuff. But instead, a lot of those like pre-made pancakes have got like mono and diglycerides in them, or high fructose corn syrup in them, or inflammatory oils, all these things that the body doesn't know what to do with.
You just add water and it makes life really simple.
But there are some companies coming along. I mean, what we have on the market now compared to 10, 15 years ago is incredible. We do have companies that are waking up to this. They're like, yeah, let's feed the body real ingredients, real food. So we're seeing more and more better options, but we still have the Bisquics, that have got the ingredients that aren't great for us.
Man,
I did too. It was like eating cake for breakfast every morning before you went to school with some golden griddle syrup full
Maybe
of...
that's why I was falling asleep in first period all the time.
Right? Because we had this big, huge high sugar crash or spike, and then we just crashed.
Yeah. Well, did you have a thought as you started your Instagram and started educating people? Did you think, well, I'm going to parlay this into a big product company and be really successful at some point?
I didn't until I started selling these digital downloads. They were just little cheat sheets because I was getting so many DMs on social media. So like direct messages of like, hey, I'm at the store and what peanut butter should I buy? And I'm at the store, what body lotion should I buy? And what, it was just everything from ketchup to applesauce to,
nutritional
And so
shopper.
I thought, you know what, to help me out, I'm just going to make these digital downloads of like the 10 easiest swaps to make at the grocery store. Or if you're buying for a baby, here's the baby stuff I would buy, or cleaning supplies. These are the cleaning supplies I would buy. And the first couple that I launched, in one day, I made like $30,000 off of these downloads.
How much were you charging for the downloads?
Oh, like $3.99. And so I was like, oh, wow, I've actually got a customer base. And so then I started thinking, okay, if I've got this customer base, why don't I start making products that I can't find on the market that I want? And then I'll just see if other people want to buy a few as well. And so back 5 years ago, we didn't have as many deodorant options as we do now. Like now you can find a bunch of better choice deodorants, ones without the aluminum and talc and things like that. But back then you couldn't. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to make the deodorant I want to make. And so we started with deodorant.
That was the beginning.
It was. And
it wasn't even like something you ingest.
It was deodorant and a face serum. Because there was this face serum I liked, but I wanted it to have some vitamin C and some good smell to it. And so I was like, I'll just make my own. And started with those, and they sold great. So for a while, though, I was just like, okay, well, maybe we'll just sell those two items. But then I had teenage boys who were looking for protein powders. So we would go and buy all these protein powders. And if they had good ingredients, they tasted like crap. Most of them tasted like manure. And then if they liked the taste of them, I didn't like the ingredients. And so I was like, you know what? I am going to find a manufacturer that will make a protein powder for me that's my formula of all the ingredients I want in it, and it's going to taste good. And so that's when we started making protein powder, and then that's sort of what helped the company take off. It was making the protein powders.
Gotcha. Okay, and so we have some back here that I am super excited to
so that's our strawberries and cream made with real
delicious.
Strawberries. So how we are a little bit different than everybody else is that we only use food. So there's no natural flavorings, because once I started making products, I realized that you could hide a lot of ingredients under the term natural flavoring. And so, and if a flavoring, you can just go to any flavor house and choose whatever you want. You can make it be birthday cake, cookies and cream, strawberries, whatever. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it how food was meant to be, use the food. And so there's real strawberries in there that are freeze-dried and crushed up into powder. And so people will say, oh my gosh, this tastes like real strawberries. And I'm like, yeah, because it's real strawberries, you know? So that's how we differ, is we use only food. So like the guava mango electrolytes have true guava in it and true mango in it.
Amazing. Well, I started with the deodorant.
Okay.
I'm a coconut vanilla.
Okay.
guy. That's my favorite.
Which is impressive, because most people, it's really hard to switch onto natural deodorant, because natural deodorant, you still sweat. You just don't want to stink.
Yeah.
And so
that's the thing.
It's hard for people to make that switch.
So, okay, this may be too much information. I don't know. But so I heard about a long time ago, the aluminum in deodorant, right? And so I just thought, well, that's not. So I switched immediately that. It was antiperspirant that had the aluminum.
Yep.
I switched to deodorant at that point. But that's
Good
the
for
thing.
you.
You still sweat, but now just ingredients is like all the good stuff.
Yeah. So you still want to sweat, because that's one of our forms of detoxing. You just don't want to stink.
Yeah.
So you've got to have something in your deodorant that helps neutralize that bacteria that's making you stink. So ours is magnesium. Other people use like baking soda, charcoal, things like that, but we use magnesium.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you're doing deodorant and the face serum. And at that point, you're making enough revenue that you can say, well, okay, let's do this protein powder. But it wasn't like you looked at the marketplace and said, strategically, I think the best next step for just ingredients is to make protein powder. Your process was more like, my sons need. You needed something in your life to get over this depression, and so you started doing that. And then there was a serum, this face serum that you like. So you're just like, well, I'm going to make my own. Your sons needed protein powder, so you started making. It wasn't like this. I mean, if you're
There's no
MBA
strategy.
School, they
I
might
know.
not. They might look at that and think, well, that's not at all how I would build that company.
Right. I know. It goes against all the strategy. I tell people I only started doing strategy in 2024. Up until that point, I literally, literally made the things that I wanted made that I couldn't find. I'll tell you a crazy one we made. We made popcorn salts.
I saw that on your website.
Because
so tell me about that.
Because my kids love flavoring their popcorn. Like every Friday or Saturday night, if we have movie night, with the kids, they want to flavor up their popcorn.
Yeah.
I looked everywhere. I could not find popcorn salts that were made with real food ingredients. They all had artificial flavors, some soybean oil.
Gross if you read the ingredients.
And I was like, if you want like butter cheese popcorn, put some butter powder in there, some cheese powder, and some salt. That's all we did. And
it sounds so easy.
Yeah, so I did it purely because I couldn't find one on the market. Pre-workout was the same reason why we made that. I mean, most of my products up to this point have literally been because I couldn't find it on the market.
Okay, let me ask you this question. You're making these products because you can't find them on the market. And I'm assuming that those go on to sell well. Have you had the experience where you make a product that's not on the market and it's kind of a stinker? It doesn't move off the shelves.
We've actually done really well. Thankfully, we haven't run into that. Some sell way faster than others. But our slowest moving one is probably because we don't market it as well. So there's a little bit of whatever we market does the best, right? And whatever you focus and pay attention to. And so our face scrubs, I love our face scrubs, but they are our slowest moving item. But then again, we don't spend any marketing money on them. So there's a little give and take with that,
Yeah. And are your products made specifically for men or for women, or is it all for everybody?
It's all for everybody, but the beauty products, I mean, dry shampoo, men usually don't need dry shampoo. They usually don't do a face scrub.
It's funny that you had mentioned dry shampoo with me.
Exactly.
Did you do that on purpose?
No,
it was pretty funny.
But they think that we're just a girl-focused company a lot of times. So we did last year come out with a men's line. So like a beard oil
thing,
and face serum and aftershave, things like that, because men play just as much of a role as the women in fertility, and fertility issues are a huge thing. And I believe it's because of the endocrine disruptors we're all using, the things messing up our hormones. So guys need to use the good stuff just as much as the girls do.
Yes. Okay. So you're now in protein powders, and that starts to go really well.
Yeah.
And what do you decide to do next?
The pre-workout.
Okay.
So we did the pre-workout because once again, my kids are now 15, 17, 18. They're wanting to work out at the gym. They want this pre-workout. And again, I can't find it made with real ingredients, and so made a pre-workout. And then at that point, once we knew that the protein powders were selling well, we started making new flavors. And so making a protein powder with real food is actually really harder than people think. It's not, most protein companies get to just go to the flavor house and be like, yeah, here's our base, add now some Oreo to it. Now add some cotton candy flavoring to it, whatever. We have to make a brand new formula every time.
Gotcha.
So it's a little tricky. And I'll tell you, like our vanilla bean, making that, it actually took us a year to make vanilla bean protein because we could not get it to taste good. And we were flying in vanilla beans from everywhere. And I thought, maybe you just can't do vanilla bean well with real food. Maybe I'm just going to have to use flavoring. And then one night in the middle of the night, I woke up and I'm like, oh my gosh, Madagascar vanilla beans. Why in the world have we not tried those? So we flew some in, and that was the game changer, and that's what made it taste good. And so now we have vanilla bean protein. But it took a year of trying different ways to make it.
I'm messing up the microphone here. Let me go back. I don't mean to do this, but I think I missed a gap of. So you were seeing the doctor who said that you could heal,
right?
And it was going to take a lot of work on your part. And at that point, that's where the study and research, finding whole, real foods to ingest to help you get well.
Yeah, that's when it started because I knew nothing about nutrition. And so I remember her saying one time, like, do you eat whole grains by any chance? And I was like, whole grains, is that wheat? Is that oats? Like, I don't know what really that is. And then she said to me, like maybe quinoa. Have you ever tried quinoa? And I was like, what in the world is quinoa? Like, and I had to ask her, I'm like, I don't even know what that word is. And so like, that's how basic and baby I was in my knowledge of nutrition. And so, I was so motivated finding her that I was like, okay, I never want to fall back into this depression. So I've got to be empowered with the knowledge of how to help my own body. And so, yes, that's when I started reading books and articles and going to classes and getting any info I could, because we didn't have social media back then, to just connect to all these doctors on the platform.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think the important message in that is that you can, prior to just ingredients, you could find all the stuff nutritionally that you needed to help yourself heal.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, because it was a lot of whole foods, a lot of supplements, things like that. But I had to shop at places like Whole Foods and things. It wasn't like today you can find good, real foods and products at Target, Walmart, Costco, Smith's, wherever. Back then you couldn't. So that's how the pendulum has changed quite a bit.
Okay. I think that's a great part of the message for people to realize is that it's all available.
Yeah.
It's making better choices.
It is.
About what you're doing. And then would you consider just ingredients kind of a way to supplement all the stuff you're trying to do nutritionally? Yeah,
because I'm trying to educate as a company, like, figure out what's your problem. Every body, meaning every person's body, has different issues. So figure out what's your problem and then supplement to help your body as best as possible. And so actually we're coming out with a lot of supplements this next year in 2024. And so in a couple weeks, we're releasing a liver one. Well, that will be a great one for those that have like methylation issues with B vitamins or have hormone issues, because the liver plays a huge role in women's hormones especially. So that's for like those type of people. We will have a brain supplement coming out for those that are worried about Alzheimer's or those that have brain fog or memory issues that just need their brain to have like a little reboot, and we're coming out with an anti-inflammatory one. We're coming out with a thyroid support. So we're coming out with supplements to help people, but I'm always about let's eat real food and whole foods, and let's go back to the basics of like how your grandparents used to eat.
Yeah.
They ate real food. So let's go back to that and then supplement the body where we need to.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I was telling you prior to the start, I used to be a great sleeper, and now I'm a terrible sleeper. And I'm curious if better eating habits would help that, or if supplementation is the answer. And I know you have a product that you have or that you're coming out with that is.
Yeah, we do have a nighttime drink.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have a hard time sleeping because their cortisol is messed up because
and cortisol is related to
stress. Is a hormone related to stress. So basically your adrenal glands all day long, if you're like hurrying to work or you're mad at the person next to you who you're driving because they cut you off, your adrenals are just shooting off this cortisol all day long, right? And you're running to the next meeting or you're mad at your boss. And so it's shooting off this cortisol all day long. And crazy enough, our adrenals have to make cortisol and progesterone. And so if they're busy making cortisol all day long, our progesterone drops, and that causes a whole slew of issues. But long story short, we're stressing too much, so our cortisol is off. So that's a key indicator of not being able to sleep, especially if you wake up at like 2, 3, 4 every day. It's just we've got to regulate that cortisol and get it back to normal levels. So I do have also another supplement called Adrenal Support that helps. It's full of like adaptogens that just help your body deal with that stress on a daily basis. for your sleep, okay,
Yeah.
one other thing. Magnesium helps regulate the nervous system, and so many people's nervous systems are on that fight or flight all the time from the stress. So if you take magnesium at night, that can be a game changer for a lot of people because it will help regulate the nervous system. So maybe try that as well.
Okay. And you have a magnesium suggestion. You don't have to make it on air, but...
I do. I have one that I love. I don't mind saying it on air. It's Magnesium Breakthrough from BioOptimizers. I actually really like it, but I am coming out with one pretty soon. So that one will be even better.
Ooh, can't wait. Call that a cliffhanger.
There you go.
So when you look at all of this experience that you went through, and I think there's something really interesting about it. I'm going to try and make this connection. This seems to be a recurring theme on this show with lots of successful people. There's some traumatic event in their lives that they have to overcome. However it is, you have to overcome that issue. And I suppose lots of people don't ever figure out a way to overcome the issue. And people who do, they find that path. There's a great book called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's you have to go through these events in your life to find your path. And looking back at your journey, would you say that's an accurate representation of your experience? Now, yours is really traumatic, and hopefully not everybody has to go through that. But do you think that propelled you to the place you are today?
For sure, 100%. And to me, it's now my greatest blessing because it's allowed me to do the things that I'm doing now. First of all, it gives you a new perspective of life. I'm like, wow, I was given a second chance at life. I've got to do something with my second chance of life. Like, I don't want to waste this. That's a huge blessing that happened. And two, you just have a lot of empathy for those that are dealing with depression. And so I have met so many people from doing this that have dealt with depression who have found help and things like that. And that's really rewarding. But people say all the time to me, like, just sell the company or just be done, like move on. And I'm like, I can't move on because to me, it's more than a price tag. To me, it's a mission. Like, I just want to help these people that are struggling mentally. And yes, Just Ingredients helps people with all different health conditions, but my passion is for those dealing with depression, anxiety, things like that, because I know you can heal, but there's so many mixed messages out there and these people don't have hope. So I'm trying to give them that hope that there is healing out there. And so, I would never do this because running a business is really hard. There's a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. And I don't think you realize that until you're in the midst of a startup. And there's no way I would continue on if I didn't have a passion for helping others. And so I think that's why, like you said, a lot of successful people have come over trauma because they want to help others. I know a lot of doctors that I interview on my podcast, they do what they're doing because they were sick at one time or they had health issues at one time and they figured out how to overcome it. So they want to help others. And so, it's given me that drive and passion to keep going.
Well, I hope that you never leave. It just feels like Just Ingredients would be a different thing if all of your experience left. And I'm sure there are lots of companies that are interested in purchasing.
There are. Yeah. And I'm not ready for that, like I said, because I just have my heart and soul in this company. Yeah. And I want to help people. I really do.
Yeah. Well,
so it's really rewarding when I do hear that something I taught, or something on the podcast has helped people.
You talked about connection earlier, and when you can align your values with the thing that you're doing on a business side with your life, that's really hard to overcome. And I think that's the connection with people, is that they can feel that authenticity.
I hope.
With what you're doing. As we look at your business and you're looking back, what is the best thing that you've done so far with Just Ingredients?
The best thing? I have lots of best things I could answer. I don't know what the best thing. Wow. Okay, well, the best thing was making protein powder because that really is what helped the company become a known brand out there. I mean, we're now official partner with the Jazz, the Bees, the Utah Royals. So that was really good for the business that way. But another best thing maybe is that I have put priorities on my business, meaning my family always comes first, and my kids know that, and my employees know that. I'm going to work really hard at work, but I also am not going to neglect my family. And so for me, that has been a best thing, because now my kids, they help with the company. They know that mom works hard. It's been a good learning experience for them. So there's lots of good best things. Starting a podcast was awesome. Brought in some amazing guests that are top-notch Harvard, scientists, psychologists. I mean, doctors from all over that are teaching people. Yesterday, we ranked in the top 25 on our podcast, which was fun. And it's just people are hungry for the info out there. There are so many sick people, and they're wanting to know how to heal their bodies and how to feel better. And so there's a lot of best things, but there's also been a lot of hard things as well.
I want to ask you about the hard things, but sticking with the theme of the best things, are you talking about these are the best things for the company because it helps with culture or connecting with people, or are you talking about these are the best things because
there's different
this increased
aspects.
Our revenue?
Yeah, there's different aspects, right? So increasing revenue would be the protein. Culture would be that we are family first, and that's throughout the whole company. Education-wise would be the podcast. So I should have said revenue-wise, the protein, culture, family first, education, the podcast. So there have been different bests in different channels of the company.
How has the family first culture in your company played with other people that you talk to who run businesses?
I think more businesses are becoming this way, especially if they want women in their work field. They've got to be a little bit flexible. And so the women know they need to put in 8 hours a day, but some of mine start at 5:30 in the morning before their kids wake up. Some finish their day at 10, 11 o'clock at night once kids have been put to bed, but they get their 8 hours in. And you can tell when someone doesn't get their 8 hours in. It's very noticeable, and you know when they are getting their 8 hours in. And so that just gives the mom the flexibility to maybe drop off carpool and then come into work and run to the little choir performance if there's a choir performance and come back to work, or leave early to pick up carpool, but work after dinner. So it just gives women the flexibility they need to be able to do both, be a mom and work.
Gotcha. So you talked about some of the things maybe you would do differently as you look back across the growth you've had over the last several years. What are some of those things that you might do differently looking back?
Differently, I don't know if I would do differently. There's just hard challenges along the way that we have learned. You want me to tell some of the hard ones rather than differently? Because differently to me, we're a growing company, right? So nothing stays the same. So what we did 3 years ago is not what we're doing now. So as we grow, we're constantly evolving, constantly changing policies, procedures, how we do things. And so you have to as a growing company. And so we've had challenges and problems along the way, but my motto to all my employees is that we are problem solvers. We're going to learn how to solve the problem and keep going. And especially in an industry where we have very high standards, there's a lot of problem solving sometimes. And so like the vanilla protein, I gave that example. Pumpkin spice protein. The food scientist was like, no one has made pumpkin spice anything with real pumpkin. And I'm like, well, we're going to figure out how to do it. And he's like, you can't do it. Pumpkin's too wet. It's going to make everything clump. We can't do it. And I'm like, we can do it. We're going to figure it out, And so we became one of the first products that used real pumpkin in pumpkin spice rather than pumpkin flavoring. And so I'm constantly telling people we can figure out a way. We're going to solve this. We're going to solve the problem. It's a challenge, but we're going to solve it. So a lot of hard things like that. And as you're growing, lots of hard things. Like I'll tell you this last month, we don't have enough customer service people. And so now we're hiring more customer service people, but not having enough as you're growing rapidly means now we've got a bunch of emails that aren't answered, a lot of missed calls that are answered. We're taking people from the product team and ops to come answer customer service. The other day I was answering customer service. So it's just difficulties and challenges as you grow.
Were those things you could have anticipated, or?
We're trying to constantly anticipate, but sometimes products, for instance, sell faster than you think are going to sell, and then you're out of an item. And so that was part of the customer service issues. We were out of 3 items that people really wanted, but they sold faster than our projections allotted for, And so it's really hard sometimes when it's a new product to know how well it's going to sell.
You mentioned problem solving, and I just am looking back over your life and all of the things you went through, and it feels like maybe that's something that you personally really developed over that time, and now you can give that example to your employees and to the people who work with you.
It is true, because when those doctors kept saying to me for over 2 years, there's nothing we can do to help you, I'd be like, yes, there is, but I don't have the tools to know how, and I don't know where to go find the help. We didn't have the internet to go find the help. So being like, no, we're going to solve this depression issue. Like, I know there's help out there. I just need to figure it out, has translated now into, we can do this. We can figure this out. In fact, I'm making a product right now that everybody's telling me I can't do. And I'm like, we're going to figure out a way to do it. I've called scientists from all over the world trying to get their input on what we can use to make this product work. And I'm like, we're going to figure this out. It takes some work and it's some challenge. It's not an overnight fix. There's no magic answer sometimes, but we're going to figure this out. So my problem solving and determination back then of wanting to heal is now translating into, we're going to make this product.
Yeah, I love that. And still, all of those things, hard work, effort, all of those things count. And it's not just in your business life, it's in your life that you had to go through and figure that out along the way and then pass that on. I think that's fantastic. This is my favorite segment of the podcast coming up. This is 3 random questions.
Okay.
And you have to answer the questions.
All right.
That's the only.
Okay. I'm curious what they're going to be.
Okay. If you were stuck on a remote island and the only thing that you could eat to survive were Apple Jacks.
Oh, great. I see where this is going, or zingers.
Or a jelly donut.
A jelly donut or Apple Jacks.
There's nothing else on this remote island. Like,
I'm dying. Just take me, God.
Really?
Oh, I would probably... Okay, well, the jelly's got maybe some fruits in it. Maybe. The Apple Jacks are maybe enriched with a few
apples.
Little vitamins.
Right? They're Apple Jacks. Come on.
Oh, both are going to kill me. Okay.
But maybe you just have to eat them to survive long enough to be saved, and then you can go back to, but for some period of time,
okay, I'm going to take the donut. I'm going to hope that it actually was made with some real ingredients in there, and that jelly has a little fruit, and maybe the donut part has some real flour in there, maybe.
I'm going for the donut, too. Because
how come?
Well, just because I'm a pastry guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. The Apple Jacks, you need some milk. There's no milk.
Yeah, well, I would include milk in the Apple Jacks.
Oh, well, that's what makes the story different.
Yeah, but then maybe you could just use the milk as part of your jelly donut.
Oh, there you go.
Milk in a jelly donut sounds pretty good. The problem is, I would have the jelly donut and the milk on the island, then I'd get saved, but then I would still eat. I would continue to eat them.
When you got home.
I wouldn't change back. Yeah, that's
every once in a while as a treat.
Okay. Are you a yoga, a cardio, a CrossFit, or a weightlifter?
Okay, so crazy enough, I did cardio for the last 13 years of my life and loved every minute of it. But as I get older, I realized that the cardio is not so great for me. And I've started weightlifting like the last 3 months. And now I'm loving weightlifting and think everybody should weightlift, especially women. And so I'm trying to push that on my Instagram of how good weightlifting is for women. So definitely weightlifter right now. So even though I don't look like it, but hey, give me a year.
You look good.
Oh,
like you look
thanks.
fit. Super
Well,
fit.
we're trying, but
So isn't it funny that like in the gyms, the old days, we used to call all the guys who were lifting weights all the time the meatheads.
yeah.
And now they were kind of right.
Yeah, exactly, right? I know. And what I'm
love
trying to push also on social media is when I go to the gym in the morning, it's all men on the weights. And I'm like, women, where are you? I'm like the one lonely woman intermixed with the men over there.
Yeah. Do you think it's intimidating?
Yes, I think
You
so.
do?
Yeah. It is. And you just got to like buck up and do it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Are you a remote cabin in the woods or lush tropical island?
Oh, lush tropical island all the way. But I'm really a beach person. So give me a boat, give me sand, give me water.
Yeah.
California girl, that's what I love. I love boating with the family, love all the surfing on the water, all that stuff. So
All the good stuff.
give me water.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Okay.
My kids would hate me if I made them go hike in the woods all the time.
Well, but I really like that too. Like,
But I do
there's
love
something-
skiing, snow skiing. So in the winter, it'd be okay.
I don't know, getting out on the trail in the woods and hiking around and just getting away from everything. There's something that's really, really amazing about that.
That is true. And I do enjoy that once in a while. Give me a boat every day. I'm great.
That's okay. All right. That was 3 random questions. That was so easy.
That's so easy.
So
I thought you were
simple.
going to ask something hard.
Well, I tried with the jelly donut thing, but that's okay. Okay. Let's wrap this up a little bit. If you were counseling somebody who is starting a business, based on all of your experience and everything that you've gone through, what is some of the advice that you would give that individual?
So 2 things. 1, start a business of something you're passionate about, because if you don't have that passion, you'll want to give up. And then 2, a CEO once told me early on my business, and we've talked about this, but he said the only businesses that make it and that are successful are those that can be problem solvers. And so he just said, don't give up when it gets hard. Just learn how to be a problem solver. And so I think that's really true, because you talk to any startup out there and they have got so many problems they're trying to deal with. And so just learn how to solve them rather than let them overtake you to become overwhelming.
Absolutely. So I grew up with a lot of athletics in my background. And one of the things that we were always told is like, work harder, get over it. You have to figure it out. It's on you. And I think that's reasonable in certain ways of your life. I don't think your experience would tell that same story. Like, sometimes there's a place you need to reach out and find help.
Yes, you do. And especially, I think this generation is, though, better about that, asking for help. We're trying to be more vocal about health conditions and, hey, ask for help when you need help. But also at the same time, I tell people there's no one out there that's going to solve it for you. There's no doctor even that's going to solve it for you. You need to be educated so that you're empowered to know which questions to ask, which choices to make. And so it really comes down to how you educate yourself as well.
I love that, because you can't eliminate all of the responsibility for the issues that you're facing. You have to take some of the responsibility and then find the resources that are going to help manage those.
Exactly.
And is that part of the culture in Just Ingredients as well?
Yes. So we're constantly talking about get educated on all certain topics. But then on the health side, I'm always telling people, like, go test. Don't guess like what you need. Go test for your body and see what you need. Find a good doctor, but that doctor's not going to solve everything for you. They don't have time to hold your hand. So go get educated on what your body needs and what fuel will best help your body.
Excellent. Okay, who is your mentor, or who is your role model, or what is the best business life advice you've ever received?
Oh, goodness. I have so many different ones depending which channel we're talking about. Yeah. But the easiest one, I mean, this is simple and comes from Mr. Rogers and His Neighborhood. Have you heard this quote? The first thing to being successful is being kind. The second thing to being successful is being kind. And the third thing to being successful is being kind. And honestly, crazy enough, working with manufacturers, ingredient suppliers, warehouse people, you know what I mean? It truly does come down to being kind. We can all be frustrated and angry and mad, and life is hard for everybody. And we don't know what everybody's going through. So you know what? Take the road of being kind and things will work out.
That is another story that I think flows through your experience, is the empathy factor that you mentioned, because you had to go through all of that.
Yeah.
And you probably relate to people who were empathetic. And now you can also demonstrate that in your work life, which is amazing. And you probably get more done by just being thoughtful and respectful of everybody who has challenges.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that I have to be stern and I've got to, press hard on goals and things like that. But at the same time, you can do that in a kind way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. One last thing. Give me your top 5 products from Just Ingredients.
Oh, that is hard.
That should have been
five,
three
my
random.
5 favorites?
Yeah. What are your 5 favorites?
Well, they're all the things I made for me. So
so selfish.
I know. Our probiotic complex is amazing. I actually have it every day. It has a probiotic in it, a prebiotic, and a postbiotic in it. And again, I couldn't find this on the market because most are only pro and pre, don't have the post. So I wanted that, so I made that. Protein, of course, because I have that every day. Electrolytes, I love our electrolytes. Use those every day.
Okay, and we have 2 of those here.
Yep.
Okay.
Our face serum, because I use that on my face, my arms, my legs, my hair, everything. So love that.
Okay.
And a daily use.
Is that just for women or men and
no,
women?
No, men can use it too. In fact, it's in the men's line as well now.
Oh,
and
nice.
So, and my 5th, maybe our tooth powder. We have tooth powder that is like toothpaste, but instead of toothpaste, it's tooth powder made with hydroxyapatite, because your teeth are actually made out of hydroxyapatite, not fluoride. So you don't need more fluoride. Your teeth aren't lacking fluoride. They're lacking hydroxyapatite. So let's replace the hydroxyapatite in them.
I had an experience with tooth powder once upon a time, a long time ago, and I don't think I could ever get over it because I kind of gagged on it. I ingested it somehow.
It's a little different because it doesn't foam up like toothpaste.
Yeah.
But the stuff that's foaming up usually isn't very good for you. And so...
It tastes so good, though, and it leaves your mouth minty fresh.
Oh, this leaves it minty fresh. It's very minty fresh. I'm going to bring you some.
Well, I need some.
It's good.
Not because I have poor dental hygiene. It's a priority for me, but I just haven't tried that. So
it's amazing.
It's a deal. You're gonna bring me some of that.
I will.
I hope you'll come back and visit us again. This has been so fascinating, and I think we've just scratched the surface.
I know. There's so many things we could talk about. We didn't even talk about the different foods or business, really. Or I know there's a lot.
It just goes by so quickly. But I think your story is so amazing and interesting that's really helpful for people who are kind of going through challenging times. They want to know there's a way out. Yeah.
I hope.
And we're going to get Jeff to
on
come
the show. Sounds good.
And be on the podcast. So
that should be a riot.
The other side.
That's right.
Karalynne, thank you so much. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I actually really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Know Your Shit podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.